Okay, do you have the full screen MCP amendments, CAM method revisions? All right. So Liz, this is you.
I see them. I'm fine. So
Okay.
Next slide, please. Just to update you on the status of where we are with the MCP final amendments, we're in the process of completing the final reviews and putting them through our internal approvals. So we expect to have that process completed this summer and be able to have the final regulations published in the fall. At that point, we're going to be focused on supporting the implementation of the final amendments. We will be looking at doing training. We'll be putting out a Q&A specific to the amendments. With respect to training, I think there'll be a significant amount of training and LSP credits available on the final amendments, and we'll also be working to finalize guidance documents related to the final amendments, including the risk characterization guidance updates. One of the committee members also asked about where we are with respect to regulations that we've been developing for natural resource damages. We've mentioned before that we're working on standard methods for assessing NRD for small to medium oil spills to surface waters, as well as groundwater impacts to drinking water areas. We have a public hearing draft under development for that, and we will be going through briefing the Secretary's office on that on our way to trying to get that public hearing draft out. We anticipate that won't happen until we've published the final MCP amendments, but that's where we are on that. And I think at a later meeting, we can get into more specifics on those regulations. I also wanted to highlight for you that there are other program regulations out for comment that are related to our program. The underground storage tank systems public hearing draft is out for public comment, and that public comment period ends July 2nd. I think they held hearings on that this past week. And there's a link there to access the draft, as well as a summary of what changes are being made there. Next slide. And here's where you'll find any of the regulations. I just wanted to highlight, in case you haven't done this, that we would recommend, if you want to be able to be alerted to upcoming department public hearing drafts and final regulations, we'd encourage you to subscribe to the regulations notices. So you see you'll find a link there to a form that you can complete, and you will be notified of any regulation changes proposed or final by doing that. Next slide. Another thing I wanted to highlight, because it's timely, is that we, on an ongoing basis, have been looking to update the compendium of analytical methods when things change, such as EPA updating the methods on which the CAM protocols are based. And we have done such updates for the 8260 and 8270 methods, 8260 for VOCs and 8270 for semi-volatiles. One of the primary updates is that these CAM protocols will now reference the most current EPA methods. And there are other revisions related to QC requirements and other clarifications. We are going to be posting the updated protocols on July 6th. And then we will also send an email out to the laboratories and through our BWSC information once that gets posted. And those methods will become effective October 29th. So as of October 29th, labs will need to be performing the methods according to those requirements in order for those analyses to be considered to meet the presumptive certainty requirements under the CAM. Next slide. I also wanted to highlight, and this is a follow-up to our meeting in March, where we had presentation related to the data quality audit that MassDEP conducted, looking at how laboratories performed on VPH, EPH, and the air methods, and published a report at that time that contained some recommendations for additional measures the department wanted to look at in terms of continuing to improve data quality. So we wanted to start by holding a discussion of those recommendations, and I wanted to make you aware that we've set a meeting date for that first discussion, July 26th, from 10 to noon. And if you're interested in attending that discussion, you can email me. We also have an email box set up specifically for CAM issues, bwsc.cam, and let me know. And that way we'll make sure you get the link to that meeting, and you'll be notified of sort of the outline for that discussion ahead of time. Next slide. So I don't know, Paul, can you see the questions? Let me see.
I can. Can you repeat the dates for the MCP revisions?
I didn't give specific dates. I gave seasons. So we are aiming to have all of our necessary reviews before the Secretary of State can publish the final amendments, completed this summer. So the draft should be then available to everyone, not the draft. The final amendments should be available to everyone in the fall. You may recall that we have a delayed effective date of 4 months. So there'll be a 4-month period from the time that they're published to the time that they go fully in effect. And that will be the time that we're going to be focused on doing training and putting out other guidances related to the amendments.
Liz, if
Yeah.
I may.
Susan?
I put a question in the chat. Many labs are not doing the updated SWA 46 methods yet. And, from a technical perspective, I consider the former method, the one right before this, so for example, 8260C rather than D, to be technically valid. Are the CAM going to allow the prior method versions and just updating with the different requirements, calibration requirements, et cetera, for the new versions?
I don't know exactly how
version for CAM compliance.
Yeah, I believe my recollection is that it's referencing the updated version. So for 8260, it's 8260D now is an 8270E. I
understand that, but I guess I'm wondering for presumptive certainty in CAM compliance, does a laboratory, can they perform C or D, for example? And then the CAM method is just updated to show you the updated requirements too. The reason I'm saying that is because many labs do not do the updated methods yet, and technically, the data, I consider the data still valid.
So the question is, how does one transition from 8260C to 8260D? And will we take into account in the CAM that transition period, some transition period? Is that kind of the
Or
question?
what if there's no transition period? I mean, there are labs that are doing the former methods for years when new methods come out. And some of the changes are not significant in terms of technical validity. I mean, I don't want to get into details, but I just want to, big picture, will labs be allowed into the future to do both methods or not? And if they're not, then that's something that maybe we need a further discussion on.
I guess I will not try to answer that because I'm not exactly sure what that means. And in my simple review of it, I observed that it now references the updated methods, but I don't know the implications of that for carrying forward the other methods, Susan. So maybe if I can get back to everyone on that with a clarification,
Okay.
I think that would be the safest way to go in terms of answering that.
Sounds good.
Any other questions from, we have a question from Elliot Steinberg. Were the labs involved in the CAM revisions, or is this going to be a surprise?
The labs were, there was some consultation with labs for some of the issues with respect to the QC requirements and some of those updates. It wasn't done in terms of having a lab work group or along those lines, but it's similar to what we did when we updated the VPH and EPH methods, where there were issues where we had some questions about what the lab's capabilities were for meeting certain QC requirements. We would inquire with the labs about that type of information.
Okay.
So Paul, Marilyn and I both have our hands up.
Yep.
This is Michelle O'Brien. Liz, question about the NRD regs. I know those are a ways off, but I'm curious if you know at this point, do you expect any stakeholder involvement in the preparation of the public hearing draft? Or are you thinking the DEP will put together what it thinks is an appropriate draft and put it out? And obviously, if we all have comments, we can submit them.
Well, what the draft we have has had past stakeholder involvement. We did do stakeholder meetings to present the methods a couple of years back now. So I don't think we're anticipating holding additional stakeholder discussions prior to putting out the public hearing draft because we had done that previously.
Okay, thanks.
Marilyn?
Yeah, my question is back on the CAM protocols is training on what's changed and how the update is going to be applied to the LSP community on the list of trainings under development.
What exactly has changed? Is that the question?
I guess if we're rolling out new protocols for CAM compliance, I think beyond just having the labs make the transition, I think LSPs need to have some training on what that means.
Okay, so the suggestion is that we also provide some training to the users of the labs on what the changes in the CAM protocols mean?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. At the time that they're published, we will be notifying everyone, and those notices, which again, we have done this in the past when we've updated methods, contain a bulleted list of what's changed. Much of that is directed at the lab, but I think that's a fair point that there may be issues that lab users should be familiar with. So we will look at that and see whether any training is needed related to that. Are there other questions, Paul?
Is it a true statement in terms of Redua, as long as your older data was CAM compliant at the time, you can continue to use that data for wayside cleanup decisions?
Well, I think Redua has a whole discussion about how to consider previous data. I don't think the updates to these methods make any of the previous data less valid if it was CAM data at the time that it was performed. But Redua even allows you to consider whether to use non-CAM data to support your decisions. So it's the CAM data is just, has a presumption that it will meet the data quality requirements for use, but there's still thought and evaluation that has to go into how that data is used and what kind of decisions it can support.
Okay, I'm looking, we have Steve.
Hey, Liz. Just to follow up on Michelle's comment on the NRD. I did attend those stakeholder meetings. I think that was, like you mentioned, a couple of years ago, so I'm pretty rusty on everything that was discussed. But I recall that there was some pretty significant concerns or issues, especially on the groundwater side, with the economic side of assigning costs to certain areas of the state, versus others in terms of the formulas that were used to calculate everything. I would just say from a stakeholder perspective, it would seem like there probably would be a benefit of having just another round of stakeholder, at least a rollout of what the program's going to look like before it goes in, is formalized into draft regulations.
Okay. We will take that under consideration. With respect to the cost benefit, there will be documentation, and we have done additional work on providing a more detailed analysis of the cost benefit for both methods, but in particular, there's detail on the groundwater method. So that will be part of what's available for review at the time a public hearing draft goes out.